One of the ongoing challenges that so many people around the world have right now with this pandemic is that it's harder to find a place to escape. It's harder to get away to the places that would refresh us in really good ways. As most of us are still required to stay in our homes for some period of time, and we're cut off from a lot of the places out in public where we would gather together with friends and laugh and play and just have a good time, things that would refresh our souls in really good ways. As we're required to stay in our homes for a little bit longer than we would normally, and if those homes are full of other people, it can be challenging to find a place where you can be by yourself, even just for a few minutes. It's why you see me filming so many of these devotional videos in my garage, because in a home with 2 adults and 5 children and 1 dog, it can be hard to find a quiet place where you can escape just for a few minutes. And if that's true for us, that was certainly true for the Israelites too. They knew. At the end of the book of Exodus, they were only about maybe 2 years into their 40 years of desert wandering, and as we start the book of Leviticus, they have about 38 more years to go, and it was even more difficult for them to escape. And they didn't even have Netflix. They couldn't binge watch any series. They didn't have the ability to move to a different city or country if they really wanted to, if they didn't like the way that things were going. They couldn't escape. And I don't think any of them had garages. But there was something even more difficult to escape from. Something that the Israelites and we have in common. Something even more difficult than their day-to-day situation. At the end of the day, it's impossible to escape from yourself. You can't get away from yourself. You have to live with yourself every day. And it seems that God knew that that's maybe the bigger challenge that we have every day, is at the end of the day feeling good about yourself that day. At the beginning of the book of Leviticus, the first 7 chapters all deal with a lot of different sacrifices. I don't know if anybody says that, boy, my favorite chapters in the Bible are Leviticus chapters 1 through 7. It's full of a lot of worship sacrifices, animal sacrifices that God was commanding the Israelites to do over and over again and again. And they were sacrifices for different types of sins. Sins that, lines that they crossed, knowing that they would cross them, just like we do, but there were also unintentional sins, sacrifices for those, things that you look back and you realize, oh, I wasn't very loving and I didn't see it at the time. Or I made a bad choice and I didn't realize the consequences it would have on someone else's life. There were the good things that you didn't do, the people you didn't help, the time you didn't spend reaching out to somebody in need. And of course, the bad things that you shouldn't do. You get to the end of the day, and for any of those reasons, it was hard both for the Israelites and it can be hard for us too, to live with ourselves. And we can't escape from that. And that's why it's so significant that in those first 7 chapters, there are 2 phrases that God wanted recorded in Scripture multiple times. The first phrase is, pleasing to the Lord. And the second phrase is, you are forgiven. Pleasing to the Lord comes up when it talks about the sacrifices. The animals that would give their lives as a sacrifice. They were a sacrifice, the Lord said, that would be pleasing to the Lord. If the people weren't pleasing, if they weren't pleased or happy with themselves, and if they thought, I bet then God isn't either, they could offer a sacrifice, and the sacrifice would be pleasing to the Lord. And he would accept that sacrifice in their place. And once he did, then he said to the people, you are forgiven. God's not going to hold that day against you, and you don't have to either. That was God's way for them to escape the guilt of any day. It's the way he gave them a fresh start every day. And it's the way he gives you a fresh start every day too. He doesn't command us to offer 7 chapters of animal sacrifices for different types of sins. Jesus was the one sacrifice that was offered for all sins, even yours. And if you look back on any day and you can find reasons that you're not pleased with yourself or happy with what you did or didn't do, it gives us something in common with the Israelites. But the sacrifice that Jesus made That pleased the Lord. He accepted it on your behalf. And so that you have the right to hear from the mouth of God himself, you are forgiven. You're forgiven. God's not going to hold it against you anymore, which means you don't have to hold it against yourself. It's not just tomorrow that's a fresh start. It's right now. It's right now. Let the sacrifice of Jesus give you an escape, be your escape from regret, from guilt, from wondering if God really is going to be with you every step of the way through this situation. The sacrifice of Jesus was pleasing to the Lord, and you are forgiven. So rest well tonight, my friends. It's a fresh start.